twofold. On the one hand, we produce and stage various plays, and on the other, we serve as a platform for online discussions on various themes pertaining to and engaging with theatre. We have staged plays such as The Thief's Carnival by John Anoyle and The Good Bad Judge, a sketch of Asdak from Bertolt Brecht's play The Caucasian Chalk Circle. Last April, we also staged the play titled Bus to Aladi, which is an adaptation of the Tamil short story by Imaya. In addition, we have conducted a series of online play readings titled Reading Theatre and a Shakespeare reading circle called Shakespeare. We have also had the privilege of hosting eminent theatre practitioners and scholars such as A. Mangai and Ganesh Krishnamurthy. Shakespeare has also featured talks such as Reading Shakespeare by Dr. David Wesley and Evitrin Natamadum Niralgal Nam, Shakespeare's Mahakavi in Tamil by Adavan Parani. Now, I hand over the floor to Samanvita, who will be introducing the speaker.
Thank you, Sneha. So I'll introduce ma'am. Dr. Madhuri Dixit is professor and head of the Department of English at Sardar College, Maharashtra. She teaches research methodology at the Performing Arts Center of Savitribai Phule, Pune. Translation in the certificate course at Ahmednagar College, Nagar. She did her PhD from the Tata Institute, Mumbai, with research on the representation of women in Marathi theatre. She has led university-funded research playwright Vijay Tendulkar and on theatre archives. Her academic interests include theatre and performance studies, education, gender studies, and critical caste studies. She has presented papers at international conferences in UK and Sweden and has published widely on films, Marathi theatre, and socio-cultural issues in journals Economic and Political Weekly, South Asian Film and Media, Samyukta, and Global Performance Studies, as well as in Marathi newspaper. She serves on the editorial board of the Marathi journal Parivartanachu Vatsaru. Dr. Dixit is the author of Samkalin Sanskritik Samiksha, a book on contemporary cultural criticism in Marathi. She is also an accomplished translator with recent contributions to the Rutledge volume, A Village Full of Stories, A Forest, and the SCERT Bharati magazine Kishore. I'll hand it over back to Sneha.
Thank you, Samanita. Madhuri ma'am, the floor is yours. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Oh yes, yes. I'm just switching on the camera. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I think I am on the screen now, and you can see me. So thank you, Sneha, and thank you, Frogs Theatre Group, for inviting me to talk with you about women in Marathi theatre. And I am also happy for one more reason. You have introduced your theatre group, and you have said that you also stage plays. So I'm aware now that I'm talking to people who are very much active in theatre, and I'm also happy to see that you people are interested in knowing more about Marathi theatre, and that too in a academic fashion. So thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be with you, with all of you. So now the scheme is this, that Sneha had told me that I can go on for 40 to 45 minutes, and later on we can have some discussion on my presentation. I tried to make a PowerPoint presentation, but it remained incomplete, so I would not share it with you right now in this lecture. What I will try to do is to talk with you and also read from some of my writings, some extracts, some pieces, some small paragraphs to give you more details about different plays. Now, this is a little challenge for me because we are going to talk about the entire history of Marathi theatre, and I am very well aware that one cannot do justice to the historical evolution as well as current practices of Marathi theatre in such a short time span, but I'll try my best. What I will be trying to do is to divide my lecture into two parts. The first part will talk about real women in theater, women who were theater practitioners, who were there in the capacity of actors, theater owners, and directors, as well as playwrights. And then in the second part, I'm going to give you some examples, some illustrations of how femininity was constructed throughout Marathi theatre and what were the issues around it. And then in that sense, I think we can talk fruitfully, meaningfully about women in Marathi theatre. So here the title connotes two meanings. One is real women who actually worked in theatre, and the other thing is the woman, the representative woman that Marathi theatre tried to construct. Now, both these things are not monolithic things, as anybody can understand. But let's see where we can go and to what conclusions we can reach through the course of this lecture. So, now I'll start. Now, right at the beginning, I want to make it very clear that when we say Marathi theatre, this is not a single theatre. When we talk of Marathi theatre, of course, we are underlining the linguistic identity of theatre. So it means that this theatre belongs to the region where Marathi speaking people reside, and it's their theatre. But it's not a singular theatre. We can as well talk about some other theatres which originate in the state of Maharashtra, such as Zadipatti theatre, which is from the Vidarbha region. You can also talk about Kamgar Rangabhumi, which is workers' theatre, basically from Mumbai. Then you can talk about Dalit theatre, which took up the question of identity politics in a big way during the 70s and 80s. And we can, of course, talk about the experimental theater, which is interested in, kind of making experiments in theatrical fashion. So all these theaters are also there, but what we will be talking majorly about is the mainstream proscenium Marathi theater, which originated in the 19th century, and it has continued till date. This is called the main professional commercial Marathi theatre as such, and it is also considered to be, let's say, almost the official identity of Marathi people, officially acknowledged or officially recognized kind of identity. So this becomes a kind of acknowledged art form of Marathi people. So about that theater, we are going to talk in the course of this lecture. So let me begin now. Okay. So when we are talking about Marathi theatre, as I have already mentioned, we are talking about the collective cultural identity of Marathi people. And this is the proscenium theatre, which began in the colonized period, that is in 19th century. So this is a theatre which came into existence as a different kind of performance culture. Why was it a different performance culture? Because it was entirely different from indigenous performance tradition in the aspect of separating the participants from the observers, with ticket sales putting an emphasis on theatre as a commodity and making it available to a smaller and wealthier group of people, as Mee describes this in her book published in 1997. Now, the role of colonial intervention in this historical development contained, and I quote Veena Naregal, she says, the shift from a cultural order that reproduced itself mainly through oral transmission to one where modes associated with print were taken to be the norm. So it is important here to register that this shift had serious implications for indigenous stratified social culture, social structure, emerging colonial middle class, and for the feminine gender. So after its inauguration of this proscenium theatre, the theatre quickly rose to become the only secular cultural form of the new powerful elites whose ideological universe was filled with nationalist ideas, Brahmanical patriarchy, and a desire for attaining socially representative status. So, we are talking about such a theater. Now, we need to also note one major aspect of this theater, which is that it quickly became a hegemonic site of caste, class, and gender, and it was very much dominated by the Brahmin people. So, about such a theater, we are going to talk now. Now, let me turn to the very first part of this lecture, which I said would be about real women in theater. Now, when we go and try to search in the archives about women who were active in the initial phase of the theatre, we see that there are no women visible in the history of Marathi theatre. We do not get many details about women, but this appears to be a myth of absence of women in Marathi theatre. And on the surface, it seems that it results from a forced disappearance from the archive, which is evident in recording inadequate details about them. Now, what do I mean by inadequate details? We only get the first names of some women like Nirabai, Taibai, Vithabai, Mahasabai, Soni Punekari, Krishnabai, etc. Now, who were these women? These women were owners of all women theatre companies, and some of them later owned companies employing a mixed group of men and women actors, and they were called Mishra Mandalis, mixed kind of groups. But all of them disappeared from the theatre scene very soon. The famous classical singer Hirabai Badodekar ran a mixed company called Purna Chandroday Sanglikar Natak Mandali. A prostitute named Sheshe Sani, who also founded a mixed company, and the name of the company is not available. The three companies, Belgaonkar, Satarkar, which was owned by one woman called Sarubai, and third company was called Manohar Company, performed regularly from 1908 to 1925. And still we don't have many details available in the archives. So from among them, the Belgaonkar Stree Sangeet Mandali was founded by a prostitute called Ekamba. Now, an exceptional upper caste actor, Kamlabai Gokhale, performed the male as well as the female roles from 1914 onwards in the company owned by her husband. From the manner of their description, they are imagined to be low caste professional women who owned the companies, previously performing various folk forms. In current times, women who dance and sing in tamasha are also addressed in similar ways, that is, by their first names only, using the suffix bai and without a proper surname. Now, we all know that the practice of surname was customized by the colonial documentary practices like the census, and identification by surname is also related to social respectability to some extent. So if we consider this particular point, then we'll understand that these women were probably not really respected by the audiences, and therefore only first names were given to them, and they were addressed by the first names. So history keeps silent on questions of whereabouts of these early women, their pre and post theatre history, as well as their discontinued legacy. But a few cases show that their disappearance from theatre can be read as replacement by men. Particularly, the women owners of theatre companies were gradually replaced by Brahmin men, and we have certain examples here, which I would skip because I don't really want to burden you with unnecessary details. So now going ahead, let's see. Bereft of ownership of theatre companies, the actor women continued for a while in the stigmatized business, since women from dignified families were not allowed to act in theatre in the early 20th century. Considering living conditions and social discrimination suffered by these early actor women, it appears ironic that their acting skills were employed to present, and here this is a little interesting thing, that they were employed to present early reformist content that aspired to constitute modern discourse about women. The play Padmavati, for example, addressing issues of child marriage and widow remarriage and performed by Natakkar Manoranjak Mumbai Hindu Stri Mishrit Natak Mandali, presents just one instance of the paradox of casting low caste Vaishya prostitute woman to play roles of chaste woman of higher caste in need of reform. Perhaps the paradox did not concern anybody, including the actor woman, who was not on the reformist agenda, obviously because the theatre did not want to turn the reformist gaze inwards and because of the complete segregation on the basis of caste among contemporary women. So, this is the story of the women who owned theatre companies, and some of them also acted in their plays. Now, if we think about the agency of these women as actors, what do we see when we peep into the history of Marathi theatre? It appears that the skill of acting was not a subject of appreciation, since those women actors who performed male characters in all women theatre companies are not found to be appreciated. Women actors in the allegorical play Dandadhari, for instance, this was played in 1909, received hostile reviews which stated that they looked like Ardhanari Nateshwar, Ardhanari, ugly and abnormal during the performance. Their marginal social status might have rendered them an easy target of ridicule, and the discouraging hostile critic might well have served simultaneously as preventive measure for other aspiring women. Now, there was a long debate in Marathi theatre which stretched over 3 decades regarding whether women should be allowed to act in plays, and the debate conveniently at that point of time forgets that in reality women had already acted on stage and had owned theatre companies as I just described. The theatre continued to distance itself from low caste women and insisted on getting Kulin. Kulin is women from good families, Sanskari families, as actors. That is how the appearance of two educated, upper caste, beautiful Kulin women, Mrs. Jyotsna Bhole and Mrs. Padmavati Vartak, in 1933 in the play Andharachi Shala is reiterated in the usual discourse as the beginning of women's acting career in Marathi theatre, while the fact is that there were women actors before them too in theatre. So it appears that for women, position in the official archive depended upon time period, caste status, and a proper incorporation in the patriarchal family. So that is the rubric for women actors and women in theatre in the initial phase of Marathi theatre. Now we should note here that once women from upper castes began acting in the theatre, it was their domestic image that controlled their respectful mention in the archive. One of the first women to act, the singer-actor Jyotsna Bhole, her proud lines from her book Antaricha Khuna qualify the observation. And I quote her, I never neglected my home or my duties, even when I was very busy in theatre and singing concerts. I made everything from side dishes, pickles to preparing spices at home. Never did I buy anything ready made, nor did we eat in hotels for want of time or energy to cook at home. Unquote. Her satisfaction in being a traditional domestic personality and her confidence in the virtue of a conventional mother and wife, unshaken, unmodified by her public career, and reiterated appreciatively by her male colleagues and fans, proves the quality of the age and the internalization also of notions of gendered femininity generated by the middle class Brahminical patriarchy. Now let us turn to the agency of women once again in the initial period in the beginning of 20th century, where women also had worked or had performed the role of theatre critic. Now when we say women in Marathi theatre to be the title of this lecture, I also intend to call your attention to the fact that women performed as playwrights, women performed as directors, women performed as critics, and women acted on the theater stage. So we need to take into consideration different ways of performing in theater, and it doesn't deal only with the stage show per se. So when women tried to criticize theater, what did they achieve or what did they say about it? A strong disapproval for the practice of female impersonators that objected artificial mannerisms employed in their acting was articulated way back in 1912 by one Mathurabai Dravid, who was the headmistress of Girls High School in Amravati, which is in North Maharashtra. Dravid read a paper titled Actors and Their Acting in the Natya Sammelan, which is the annual meet of Marathi Theatre Council, which was held in 1912 in Amravati. She registered an observation that popularity of female impersonation among men audiences was encouraging them to expect similar artificiality of mannerisms from their women, which she feared was detrimental to the naturalness of a woman's gait, movement, and behavior. It seemed that women were ironically made to lose on both the grounds. Their entry as actors in the profession was socially disapproved, and yet conditions were theatrically generated which pressurized them to imitate theatrical ways in their real lives. Dravid's views were later referred to in the debate on the issue of entry of Kulin women in theatre as actors, expressing her dissatisfaction in clear terms for normative female impersonation as unworthy of imitation by women spectators. She warned against possible consequences of this very artificial way of acting. Her representative example is very important because it embodies a female critical voice right in the midst of heyday of musical plays, one of the glorious traditions of Marathi theatre that depended majorly on star female impersonators for success, such as Bal Gandharva. Dravid's articulation cuts through the theatre magic of melodious voices, stardom, and acting skills of female impersonators like Narayan Rajhans, that is Bal Gandharva, to convey that some women audiences could see through the gorgeous theatrical display of artificial female mannerisms and could imagine its consequences for women. Her views demonstrate an alert reception, anticipation of power of the theatrical medium, a clear perception of women's interests and possession of will, and courage to articulate the difference of opinion that she had. So we do have, women who came out as theater critic and who were not afraid of voicing their own true perception of the Marathi theater and particularly of female impersonators. Now let us go ahead into the 20th century and let us talk about the 70s and 80s, 1970s and 1980s, where we see women coming forth as directors in the theater. So these were decades of increasing awareness espoused by women's liberation movement about different realities of women and possible reasons for their pre-existing commonplace unsympathetic understanding. It was in tune with the mood that a woman director of repute exercised her right as a theatre director and also as a woman in not accepting the unconvincing destiny of women characters as given by the playwrights. So I'm going to give two examples from two different playwrights and what was the debate between the playwright as well as the director. The first instance of disagreement happened in 1976 between a woman playwright and a woman director of her play, the well-known theatre director and actor Vijaya Mehta, who just a few days back passed away, and an equally well-known playwright, director and producer, Sai Paranspe. Paranspe's play Jaswandi has a rich, beautiful woman called Sonia as the protagonist. She is bored with her life and pursues various recreational activities in the company of her friends to come out of that boredom. Unable to prevent consequences of her own actions and jilted by all, she takes to drinking and falls victim to the lust of her driver, who takes advantage of her drunken state. Finding the end too lurid, director Mehta wanted to change it to show that Sonia returns to her old social circle, outwardly the same but inwardly dead. Mehta perhaps wanted to prevent Sonia from a metaphoric death in the rape, but finally the version of Sai Paranse was carried on with, perhaps to make the play run successfully. So this is one example where the woman playwright had her say about the play. The second incident happened in 1981 in case of Jevan Davi's play Savitri, which is based on his novel Adhantari. The protagonist woman, Savitri's conjugal life gets in jeopardy after her boss, Katie, is attracted towards her. Consequently, her husband, Shamu, leaves home along with their child, and the boss enters it afterwards only to leave her after a few years to go back to his original family. Deserted by both the men in her life, the original play shows Savitri to have become an easy target of sexual harassment, almost reduced to the status of a call girl, suggested theatrically by a foul phone call. Mehta did not want only the married woman Savitri to be punished for her perceived as illicit relationship with her boss as shown in the play. The difference of opinion between the director and the playwright hinged on the question of whether to perceive stark reality of a woman's targeted sexuality or to comprehend that a woman may stick to her own life even after it is ruined in public eyes. After much hair splitting, finally the end they worked out by mutual agreement was to show that Savitri commits suicide by walking in hallucination out of the window and falling down from the upper floor. However, this end disappointed the feminist audiences and critics who reprimanded the director and the playwright for letting down women's cause. So such discourse was built around the play. So what is noteworthy and common to both these cases of directorial intervention is the desire to see women continue their life with despite the consequences of sexual harassment. Of their problematic or wrong decisions. Audiences do not come to know about the agency of these women in their bad days of life. The notions of what is to be recognized as a degenerated life in case of women continue at the level of playwriting. Mehta's struggle showed that the two usual punishments for digressing women in patriarchal society, which are rape or death, and their theatrical reiteration were not acceptable to her. So this is how we see that uh, the real women who were active in theater as actors, as theater critic, as playwrights, or as directors had their say, but really speaking, we can't say that history did justice to them or that their details were commonly known and people appreciated those details or that it could change the course of Marathi theatre. So now I would like to turn towards the second part of my lecture, which is about how femininity is constructed in theatre. Here, I am going to give you a lot many details about different plays, and as far as possible, I am trying to go linear along with the time. I would start from the early 20th century, and I would probably end by 1990s or so. So let's see how this goes. Now, Marathi playwright B.V. Varerkar felicitated the theatre as a vehicle of public education. So, theatre was regarded in high esteem towards the beginning of 20th century. Since colonial times, Marathi theatre has remained a cultural strong fortress of middle class Brahmins. Various dimensions of Marathi theatre, namely discourse in print, playwriting by university graduates, classicization of stage music, patronage by Brahmin caste social personalities, and the theatre's phenomenal role in colonial nationalist movement under the Brahmin leadership, etc., pronounced the Brahmin caste dominating presence in Marathi theatre. The mainstay of respectability for caste dominance in the theatre was the principle of purity. Purity is a very important notion for caste. If we will not go much into the caste discourse, but suffice it here to say that purity works as a main notion in in caste studies or caste discourse. Purity also works as pivotal notion for the gendered existence of women in Indian context, just as it is for the religious hegemony of Brahmin caste. The context here is meanings of respectability routed through principle of purity embodied in a woman character by celebrating qualities of sacrifice, chastity, and hard work, and by denying separate agency to women. Therefore, it is the representative woman who assists sharing of the theatre's caste concerns with its culturally homogeneous audiences. Now, the representative theatrical woman is invariably the protagonist and a chaste, pure woman who attracts audience sympathies for any wrongdoing to her. Being unmindful of worldly ways is as well considered a virtue in her case, and it is assumed to convey a kind of innocence and integrity of character. The other side of this pure impure binary, as visible in theatre women, is represented by her confidant, who is a worldly wise, practical woman to the extent of being dubbed as sort of selfish woman and may belong to a different and lower caste than that of the protagonist. She receives lesser share of theatrical space and subsequently of audience appreciation since her resistive spirit and non-submissive nature are not sanctioned by patriarchal values engaged into almost an act of taming the shrew. Her agency emerges from her intelligent and practical understanding of adversarial situations, but loses its sheen in front of the high morality leading to inactivity of the protagonist woman. So we do have examples of such pairs of women in plays such as Hamida Baichi Kothi, which was staged in 1976, where we have Hamida Bai and Saida as the binary pair. Or there is another play about which I wish to talk more, which is Ekat Pyala, a very famous play, Sangeet Natak from a Marathi tradition, written by Ram Ganesh Gadkari. It portrays Sindhu and Geeta as the protagonist and confidant pair. This binary of pure impure thus appears to take the form of desirable or undesirable feminine virtues in the protagonist subordinate pairs of women characters. Nevertheless, this idealization of womanhood must not have been very easy affair for the theatre even in those times, especially in the wake of colonial modernity and the discourse of reforms it initiated for women. The new educated and later employed woman was to be in principle at crossroads with the traditional image of the woman. Theatrical way out of this conundrum was to neglect unsettling questions projected by the modern conditions of life and to adhere to traditional feminine values to safeguard the patriarchal interests. So that is, in short, the story about how theatre fought the social political pressures of reforms and how it actually safeguarded the interests of the middle class, particularly the moral value system that was very near and dear to the middle class, upper caste middle class. Now, let us see one by one how this kind of pure impure binary, or how the agency of women was not tolerated by theatre. Now, going beyond the 20th century and entering the last part of 19th century, we see that Govind Ballar Deval, who wrote the famous play Sangeet Sharada, which is still very popular play with Marathi audiences, again a Sangeet Natak. In that play, the story is of a child marriage. Sharda is the protagonist girl in the play who unsuccessfully opposes her marriage, which is fixed by her greedy father and a go between kind of old lustful man. Now, Sharda was idealized and adorned by audiences and critics alike for her genteel sophistication and her restraint, traditionally much appreciated feminine virtues. In her comparison, her predecessors like Godu and Gangu, who are from a different play, Manorama, or Yamuna, who is from the play Swairikesha, appear untamed and unrestrained. Articulation of their displeasure and opposition for similar issues is blatant in those plays, perhaps owing to the still nascent skill of characterization. But Sharda seems to be a very sophisticated girl. Now, what happens to Sharda? Let's see something from the play. Um, Sharda's thoughts and actions are inspired by a definite moral scheme which has no place for violation of traditional gender code. Therefore, her protest can only be articulated in the form of satirical retorts. So, that much agency is allowed to her, but not beyond that. And in this, she is joined by her mother Indira, who is extremely agitated by the decision made by her husband to marry Sharda to an old person, and takes to hurling angry words at him. And what does Indira say? I quote, "What do you mean by intent? I won't allow it. I don't care if we cannot find another match for the girl. I'll keep her with me all her life, but I won't allow her to be sold off for the love of money. I'm not interested in profit, however large, at the cost of our daughter. She is not someone we pick off the street. She is a whole flesh and blood life. We'll marry her only where she has a chance to be happy." Now, these are very, very inspiring dialogues, but historically, not the first playwright to render his women characters a voice of protest, Devil's characterization of the mother daughter duo effectually leads to more exposure of cruelty of the greedy father, but not to any action on part of both the women, unless we consider thought as action or articulating an awareness of oppression as protest. Why I'm saying this? Because somebody suggests Sharda that she should, kind of elope from her house, and the mother will not say a word about it, and the father will be kept in the dark. But she doesn't accept that suggestion. We see Sharda and her mother approach elderly women relatives for advice and solace. Moreover, what is dissatisfying is that in equally robbing both the mother and the daughter of their respective agencies in the sense of firm action like elopement, which in fact is suggested by Sharda's own uncle too, maternal uncle, the differences between their status, age, or experience as women are wiped out, and they are made equally vulnerable to patriarchal forces. Now, while quoting Sharda's example, I also mentioned the social reforms and the pressures it may have created on the theatre. So, how did the theatre respond to the new woman, to the reformed woman? Let us see some more details about that part of history of theatre. Once the weak, conventional, virtuous woman was deprived of agency, as we just saw in case of Sharda, it became comparatively easy to caricature her counterpart, which is the new educated woman, juxtaposed against her. The new woman's intentions, mannerisms, and language originating from her unwarranted enthusiasm for reforms, formed a target of ridicule. And we have examples from different plays such as Taruni Shikshan Natika, which was staged in 1886 by N.B. written by N.B. Kanetkar, who was significantly a devotee of extremist leader B.G. Tirak. Now, Chimney is the protagonist. She is a young married girl learning in an English school, and throughout the play, she speaks in half Marathi, half English language. Her attempts to drive away her husband and discourage his gestures of love are satirized by showing her study love poetry in English at the same time. So, in this way, the play ridicules the agency of Chimney. Now, let us turn to Ram Ganesh Gadkari, whom we mentioned a while ago, and the play Ekach Pyala. This is a very, very famous play, a very well-known play. This was first performed in 1917. It presents one of the most popular Kulin women characters, Sindhu, who is totally devoted to her brilliant advocate but addict husband, Sudhakar. Now, she is a Pativrata woman in the sense that her devotion reaches extreme bounds as to denounce all other relations for his sake. Okay. Now, uh, her husband is a drunkard, and because of his addiction, she is facing lots of troubles in their marriage. But she simply refuses to apply her mind to her situation, and she is persuaded to view herself as capable of greater virtue. So, her only response to whatever her husband does is to kind of uh, not to criticize his actions and all the time support him in whatever situation he lands himself in. So here is a representative dialogue from Sindhu. She is talking to her friend Geeta, and Geeta is criticizing Sudhakar's, that is Sindhu's husband's actions. Geeta says, "What kind of a husband is a drunk? He doesn't even deserve to be called a human being, leave alone a god." And Sindhu replies, "Why should we forsake our dharma, religious duty, by polluting our tongues with this kind of talk?" So here you may understand that Sindhu's mind is totally, I mean, it has stopped thinking about her own situation and it is kind of sticking to her religious duty as a wife all the time. So Sindhu and Gita also form the binary, pure and impure, in which feminine idealism dubs level-headedness as betrayal. Theatrical idealism in the character of Sindhu becomes a complicated phenomena after acknowledging Balgandharva's credit, who played Sindhu's role. Balgandharva, the famous female impersonator from Marathi theatre, his credit in intensifying her appeal to Marathi audiences. Now, glorification of wifely devotion and eternal motherhood in Sindhu helped the play obtain a long-lasting middle-class adoration, which continued to welcome Sindhu's repeated comeback in different versions in majority of the plays written till 1970s. So, such a long-lasting impact this play had on Marathi theatre. Now, when we move on to 1940s and 1950s, we see that Ibsen is introduced to Marathi audiences in translation too and in theatrical adaptation too, but the adaptation doesn't remain true to the original play. And how? Let us see those details now. Uh, I call that as Nora's false sisters. P.K. Atre, who was another famous playwright, director, journalist, and very well-known author in Marathi. Atre's protagonist woman Nirmala in his play Ghara Baher, and M.G. Rangnekar, another well-known playwright and very famous playwright too. Rangnekar's Bhanumati in the play Kulavadu leave their in-laws' homes in protest of false doubts of adulterous behavior. Nirmala is accused of having an affair with a friend of her husband, with whom she shares her creative writings. It is shown in the play that she reads out some portion from her novel to a male friend. Unable to bear the charge, she leaves home and takes shelter at the house of a hypocrite social worker and advocate of dubious character. Before the advocate could seduce her, she is approached by her husband, who assures her of her place in the family and invokes her motherly love. Eventually, she returns home unconditionally. The other woman, Bhanumati, from Ranganekar's play, becomes a film actor whose success is an eyesore for her jealous husband. Unable to suffer his taunts and sarcastic behavior anymore, she leaves home to stay with her in laws in another town. Once the husband acknowledges his mistakes, she too returns home unconditionally. In both these cases, domestic conflicts prove to be short lived and less challenging or reformative because these Nora's sisters, who actually leave their homes handicapped by the vision of the playwrights, quickly return home unconditionally on quick and superficial assurances from their husbands, thereby choosing not to confront real questions of surviving individually in the world after deviating from the family structure. So their return to traditional roles, despite their newly awakened aspirations, makes it a part of theatrical legitimization of patriarchal ideology. Okay, now I have already reached my time limit, but Sneha, I think it will be okay if I take 10 minutes more.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that'll
Okay,
do.
okay, fine. Thank you. Now I will skip some of the details in between and I'll like to jump to a new phase that occurred during the 1960s in Marathi theatre. This phase was constituted by playwrights Vijay Tendulkar, Maheshil Kunchwar, Satish Alekar. Some of these names may be familiar to you. Now, this new phase was also characterized by different use of language. The theatrical language changed both in its mechanism as well as in its appearance. The style of acting changed, the duration of plays changed, the songs were removed from the plays, so plays became entirely prose plays. So, at the surrounding environment was that of women's liberation movement and different kinds of social movements. The state had become an independent state, even the state of Maharashtra, I mean, as a linguistic state. And Marathi people uh, by that time had become well known for their theatre. So, in such an environment, now we are going to see what happens to the theatrical construction of femininity. So, the women characters in Tendulkar's plays appear as strong and awakened to ask uncomfortable questions to patriarchal social system. Miss Benare, a school teacher from the play Shantata Court Chalu Ahe, this play appeared in 1962, would exert her right on her sexual body in the pseudo court trial, facing accusations of illicit relationship and illegitimate motherhood. Still, the theatre, as if hesitated to back the woman's declaration of her right to her body, as the words that were mouthed by Miss Benare, and I would like to quote her. She says, "For many years, I haven't said a word. Chances came and chances went, but each time I shut my lips tight. Only one thing in life is all important: the body. You may deny it, but it is true. My private life is my own business. I'll decide what to do with myself. Everyone should be able to." So these words were uttered on the stage in a different fashion. What do I mean by that? They were mouthed as soliloquy in the performance. So here the playwright doesn't make the character say these many things to the other characters, that is the society, metaphorically speaking, but this is something that goes on in her inner mind. So even if this utterance seems to be a very reformist kind of thing, or utterance or an expression of a woman's awakening towards her right on her body, it still is not. So these words were mouthed in soliloquy, as I said, albeit under a bright spotlight, but unheard by other characters who symbolize social agency in the play. Now, open articulations of unconventional aspects of femininity, of secret feminine desires, for example, found another mention in Satish Iyengar's play Mahanirvan. Uh, in this play, we see that how the protagonist is dead and Rama is his wife. She is sitting next to the corpse. Okay, so throughout the play, we see the corpse on the stage, and the play captures the moment in which the corpse is to be prepared for taking to the crematorium, and people are making arrangements, and then what happens in between. So that is the story of the play. So Rama is sitting next to the corpse and she expresses her infatuation with a stranger even before the funeral rites of her dead husband are fully performed. And what does she say in the play? She says, and I quote her, "My prince who will take me away from this block on a white charger, then all my troubles will be over. No more housework, cooking, and cleaning." It was as though all this melted away and there were just the two of us left in the world, me and my third from the left. So the person about whom she is musing is actually standing there in the crowd, and she spots him as a person standing at the third positions. Therefore, this kind of mention, me and my third from the left. So the shock value of her desire lies in what she says and the time of saying. It presents a tussle between appropriateness of her desire in the social eyes and her right to lead a happy life after she becomes a widow. So these are some outlier examples, you may say. Now I turn towards the third important playwright, who is Mahesh L. Kunchwar. In his play Sonata, we see three women, elderly women, Dolan, Shubhada, and Subhadra. They are shown to be unabashedly happy in this play, and they find confidence to defy social conventions in their independent income, consumption, awakened aspirations, and chance solidarity or co living. So, what do they say in the play? And I quote them. Each sentence is uttered by one of them. So, this only single line dialogues. Dolan starts, "What awful women we are." Shubhada says, "We are all right. We are self sufficient. We earn, we spend." Dolan says, "Self centered. Do nothing for society. Without commitment, without any aim. No ideology. We are not even feminists. Blow money, smoke, drink, and my affairs. See what people we are. Decadent, but happy. We are happy, unabashedly happy, abominably, obscenely." So, such is the dialogue from the play. Now, on the backdrop of usual reluctance and hesitation on the part of Marathi theatre to show women who are confident, powerful, happy, and successful, the mocking tone of this dialogue and the quality of orchestration above looks very different. Yet, both the attributes do not simply induce a sense of freedom enjoyed by the characters, and this is my observation, but it marks rather some missing quality about it. This is because the freedom appears to be conceptualized by a radical yet reductionist logic that is apparent in sentences like, "Instead of one man, fuck the whole world and happiness is yours." The motivation is contextualized by reference to consumption, like blow money, smoke, drink, which shows the connection between consumption and the idea of freedom, a position that could dangerously side with the market forces. It therefore appears that the women's idea of freedom has not been sufficiently problematized by the playwright and politically explored in the play, considering that to show such middle aged, working, and co living women aware about their subjectivity is itself a political position vis a vis feminine gender. So, by way of illustrations or examples, I would like to stop here talking about Marathi theatre because Post Elkunchwar, post Ayekar, post Tendulkar, there is a new phase in Marathi theatre, but it will require more time. And the phase shows some different characteristics of Marathi theatre, which we may, if given a chance, I would like to talk about it later. But since there is a departure in the latter phase of the theatre, I would not embark now on that journey. And I would like to just say some of the concluding remarks here, and then we can keep the floor open for discussion. So, in this context of theatre, meaningful connections between language, identity, discourse, meaning, sociological knowledge, and the culture specific conditions of gender go into the making of theatrical characters under focus. Now, qualities of sacrifice, chastity, and hard work are equally celebrated as feminine virtues on the stage, as they can potentially deny separate agency to women. It is observed that the representative woman in Marathi theatre is made to abide by similar feminine virtues. Therefore, it is she who assists sharing of the theatre's caste concerns. Additionally, use of the domestic as theatrically preferred location, and here I would like to explain that most of the plays in Marathi theatre choose the drawing room to be the locale of the play, the setting of the play. And here it is, jokingly called as Sthar Diwan Khana. Sthar means place, Diwan Khana means the drawing room. Phenomena of Marathi theatre. So the preferred location also, speaks something about the character of the theatre at the cost of a larger and heterogeneous social created conducive conditions for displaying the submissive and idealized woman. So her existence represents an important dimension of evocation of the theatre as a respectable cultural domain. So the theatre per se is not interested in women, it seems, and is not also interested in showing their journey towards freedom, towards self-expression, towards self-awareness, etc., etc. But it is more interested in protecting the domain of middle class values and upper caste values of the middle class, and therefore the mainstream Marathi theatre, which is geographically also located in the western part of Maharashtra, and also particularly to mega or metro cities like Pune and Mumbai. This kind of description of Marathi theatre also speaks a lot about the evolution and character of Marathi theatre. So here I would like to stop. Thank you for giving me some extra time. And now the floor is yours. You may ask doubts or questions or your feedback. So I would look forward to having some discussion. Thank you, Sneha. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful talk. The floor is open for discussion. I would just like to add, ma'am, that your video seems to be stuck, but your voice has been very clear so far.
Okay.
Perhaps it's a net issue.
Well,
Uh,
I was not aware of that. I was reading some portion from my writing, so I didn't look at the screen.
yeah,
Anyway,
yes, it's completely all right, ma'am. Yeah.
that's fine. Yeah, yeah.
If anybody would like to ask questions or add comments, please feel free. The floor is open.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, this is Kalyani. I am currently a PhD student at Symbiosis,
Okay.
and the topic that I am working on is women and cinema from the 1930s to 1950s and their autobiographies. And your talk gave me a background to how to move forward with the topic that I'm currently working on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to read more to see if there are any parallels in the. I'm sure there are parallels in the theater, the way women were, and in the cinema.
Hmm.
But thank you so much for the talk, and thank you to Samanvita who invited me to join this.
Yeah. Yes, now thank you for your feedback. I think yes, there are some similar examples from the movie, but I think you'll have to also think about the reception of the movies, plus the technicalities of the movie, and also about some outlier examples. For example, if you see the Marathi movie titled Kunku, then there you have a very strong female protagonist, and well, you will have to have a different kind of analysis altogether for that one particular film. So, but one more point that I would like to convey to you is this, that in the initial phase of cinema, there were many exchanges between Marathi theatre and cinema, which you should take care of while you are reading about it. For example, Bal Gandharva himself acted in one of the films, and he was totally unable to adjust to the camera techniques, because his style of acting was meant for theater, for the live audiences, and to act like that in front of camera, which was not required at all. And he used to have so many corrections and suggestions from the director, which he was not really, comfortable with. So all these things, I think, would go into your studies. And well, that is a very interesting topic and much required too. So please have some concern for the exchanges that happened between theater as well as the initial phase of cinema. Yeah, look forward to
Definitely. Thank you so
listen
much.
from you
Uh,
more about theater. Yeah.
Definitely. Also, one question that I would like to ask,
Hmm.
did Marathi theater, by any chance, at earlier, try to go to the folk culture that we have? Like, as in cinema, we have how they appropriated tamasha. Did at any point Marathi cinema, Marathi theater do it?
The answer will depend on what kind of Marathi theater we are looking at. If we are looking at the commercial, proscenium, modern Marathi theater, from which I gave my examples in the course of the lecture, then the theater did appropriate tamasha and folk forms, because particularly in the Sangeet Natak phase, which was there in the latter part of 19th century and the early part of 20th century, the tunes of the songs were picked from different folk forms, okay, folk music. And actually, well, I have written about this in one of my articles, which is based on comparison between two playwrights, Hirabai Pednekar and Girijabai Kelkar. I have shared the paper with Sneha, so you can take it from her if you would like to read it. But what happens there is that the directors, the playwrights used to go and attend the concerts of these bais. They used to appreciate their singing, but they also used to almost quote unquote steal the melodies, steal the tunes, and use them for the Natya Sangeet in their plays, and without acknowledging the original source of these melodies or tunes. So in the credits, the name of the singer, the bai, will not appear, but it will be taken from her. So in that sense, it appropriated folk forms, yes, surely. And if you say that whether they used it in the, proper way, acknowledging it, etc., and keeping the folk tradition alive, then yes, but you will have to look towards the workers' theatre in Mumbai. You know, they were not trained actors as such; they were workers. That's why the theatre is called workers' theatre. Now you can call that as subversive theatre, one of the subversive theatres in Marathi, because they used to criticize different policies, different public events, and whatever was problematic in their own lives in Mumbai at that time. But they used to do it, perform it in the style of the prose part of tamasha and different folk forms coming from the Konkan region, particularly because many workers, there were no two broad groups of workers, one coming from the Konkan belt and the other coming from the Ghat area, which is Satara and the adjacent areas. So they had a different folk tradition, and the Konkani people had a different folk tradition, and they used to incorporate the way of speaking, dialogue delivery, even the gestures and bodily movements, etc., etc. Now here I would just like to suggest, if time and Sneha permit me to say this, but if you happen to see some of the episodes of Hasya Jatra, which are available on YouTube. This is a show, laughter show aired on Sony, I guess, yes, I think Sony television. So if you see some of the episodes, you'll find two or three actors in that show who repeatedly come in various skits, and they are from Konkan region, and their body language, their language per se, and uh, uh, their way of creating humor too is from the Konkan region. So they have, kind of kept the tradition alive even on the electronic screen, so to say. So this is a mixed picture. You will have to pick up details according to your own requirements there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Kalyani. Thank you, ma'am. If there are any more questions or comments, please feel free. Shrita, yes, please feel free to.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
You
yes.
are.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. This is Shruta.
Hi.
Your talk was really wonderful, and honestly, it was like very well structured. Like I was able to understand like fully. So thank you so much for a very well structured lecture. Um, so first of all, my introduction to Marathi theater, fortunately, I don't know, my introduction to Marathi theater was through this one film, Natrang. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, my knowledge of Marathi theater is limited to that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then one of your, I think the coordinators of this lecture, they had shared a couple of your writings as suggested reading. So I was going through them, and one of your papers on Begum Barve,
Mm-hmm.
that so about the female impersonator actors, about how the play like deals with them. That again reminded me of Natrang. So it just got me thinking ki, not only is there a certain kind of femininity and feminine values that are manifested through the fantasies that
Mm-hmm.
you talk about, but it also seems to put the actors in a very precarious positions, because in Natrang, Guna is like, there are Guna uh, who plays the role of the effeminate character. There are multiple sexual advances made towards him, and he has to face a lot of bias. So, femininity in any form of uh, that digresses in any form also faces a lot of violence. I hope I'm able to make myself
Yes.
clear. I'm not able to put my thoughts fully,
Yes.
but I just wanted to make this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so it was never simply accolades or praise that they gathered, appreciation that they gathered from the audiences. There used to be influential people who used to visit the Natak Mandalis. The people used to stay in one place because the performances would go on for the entire night. But I'm talking about the practice of female impersonation in the early part of 20th century, where male actors used to play the female roles. So they were equally vulnerable to sexual exploitation, and there are oblique kind of references which come into very old books written in Marathi by either the owners of those natak mandalis or their mentors or people who used to fund the staging of the play, you know. So, whatever you have observed about Guna in the play Natar, in the cinema film Natrang, is equally applicable to the female impersonators from the theater too. And there are so many several anecdotes about these people. I would also suggest you to see another film if you can have access to the film. It is called Bal Gandharva, which depicts the life story of the famous female impersonator Bal Gandharva. And one of the anecdotes about Bal Gandharva says that he dressed up as a woman and he participated in a real social ceremony called Hadi Kunku, which is a exquisitely feminine kind of gathering where women come together and they exchange some pleasantries and they exchange some gifts, etc. And in a year's cycle, there would be 3 to 4 such ceremonies, and it is supposed to be the religious duty of a married woman to conduct such a ceremony in her house. So it's said that Balgandharva once went to somebody's house dressed up as a woman, and nobody there could, see that he was a male person and not a woman as such. So his perfection. This is in appreciation of her skill to carry himself as a woman. There are also references even in that movie Balgandharva, where we see that wealthy women go to cloth stores to buy saris, and they pressurize the shopkeeper to sell them the saris which are similar to the saris worn by Balgandharva on stage in the performances. So Balgandharva was quite a phenomena, but this is all the bright side of the picture. As you have correctly guessed, there is a dark side to the picture too, where if not Balgandharva, others were equally exploited, sexually exploited. There used to be incidences of homo relationships in the Natak Mandalis, and particularly when very young boys used to be accommodated in the mandali because they by that time they would not grow beard, etc. So they would really look very delicate and all, and they would suit the role of a female character in the play. And these boys used to come from poor economic background, and they did not have any godfathers in many cases, so there was no one who would take care of their physical well-being in the Natak Mandal. So these episodes are also part of theater history, and well, one needs to, but uh, usually one would have to look deep into the historical narratives about theater, and one would have to really find out, search for these references, oblique references, which come during the course of the narration. There is no book or no chapter which is devoted entirely, let's say, to these incidences or these kind of phenomena. So in that sense, one can approach history of Marathi theatre. But yes, it was there. There is no point in denying it. Yeah. So that's
Thank
my
you, ma'am, for
most well.
thank you, ma'am, for your response.
Mhm.
Thank you. If there are questions or comments, please feel free to raise them.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Hi, ma'am. It was a lovely talk, ma'am. For me, my interest recently, I've been reading up about the shift from few of these courtesan performers, and then to the early film industry. And we
Mhm.
I recently ended up reading about how few of the performers were able to actually make it into the early Bombay film industry. So I
Mhm.
wanted to think about how with how morality was being uh, constructed, and how a lot of these performers were being neglected in theater. As we I was reading your article on the I'm forgetting the article about the two theater
Speaking to the
playwrights.
male world. Yeah, speaking to the male world.
Yeah. So I was thinking how the theater world was I mean, the proscenium Marathi theater was kind of shifting away from these performers. While some of these performers were able to make it into the industry, were they able to ever make it into the proscenium theater, or was it something that always kind of looked at them very, negatively? Was it not? Did it never happen?
Okay. Samvita, you are thinking about two different historical periods when you talk about theater and cinema. Now, these women who were folk performers, so to say, or who were singers and dancers, and some of them were prostitutes too, sex workers too, but not each and every woman from that category was a sex worker. But when these women were there, they used to come from tamasha like background of folk arts. But in case of theater, this phase took place in towards the end of 19th century, or let's say latter half of 19th century. Marathi theater, it is said that it officially begins in 1853 when we see Vishnudas Bhave, who was a courtier, who was a servant of the king of Sangli. He was a puppeteer too, and he presented a show to the court, and the king was very happy. He gave him some grants, and later on, to adjust the amount or to write off his loans, etc., to repay the loan, Vishnudas Bhave thought of moving to Bombay, where Bombay already had a colonial culture of theatre, but it was meant for the restricted class of British officers, British soldiers, etc., and it was the English theatre that they were visiting. Now Vishnudas goes to Bombay and he performs the first play called Sita Swayamvar Akhyan, which is modeled on the Kannad folk form of Yakshagana. Fine. So the way of acting or the story that is told, which is from Ramayana, etc., etc., the use of puppets in the play, all those things take place there. But that is supposed to be the first, let us say, performance of Marathi theatre. It originates from that play. It is said so because it was a ticketed performance. The folk performances were not ticketed performances. They used to take place in the open arena, where the entire village can gather and watch the performance. We may not call it a play, but a performance. Now, Vishnudas Bhave slowly started writing down the script for later shows, okay, different kinds of shows. And at the same time, why I'm giving you a peep into the history of Marathi theatre, because I think that I need to clarify the two notions of women singers or folk artists entering theatre and women performers entering cinema. Okay, so I'm now talking about theatre. Now, parallelly, what we see in Bombay is that the university is established, the Bombay University, and people are getting their degrees from university where they are studying Shakespeare. So we have now these newly educated bachelor students who are also interested in performing plays as well as writing plays. So scripting a play now starts towards the end of 19th century. We also have a social reformer, a very prominent social reformer like Mahatma Phule, who also pens a play and he submits the play for some kind of grant, let us say, which was called Dakshina Prize. The name was Prize. But the grant is denied to him, and then he understands that his caste politics, of course, doesn't gel with the caste politics of the upper caste men in Pune. And that point onwards, he never turns back to playwriting. Okay, so these are all, points which need to be connected when we see the appearance of women in theatre. Now, when Vishnudas is presenting shows and earning money, of course, everybody comes to know that this is a way of earning money and establishing your own entertainment company. So women used to start companies. I mentioned some of the details in the beginning part of my lecture, initial part of my lecture. And then they used to also have men employees in their company, and they used to present shows. But of course, one is not very sure whether these shows were scripted. One is not very sure whether these shows used to engage into singing, whether there were real stories, whether the stories were taken from epics or not, and what was the content of the plays. So all these details are, maybe forever lost to us. History doesn't help us there. The archive doesn't help us there. But the mention of women owners and women performers is there in the archives, and it is a very kind of what do you say? It is very um, uh, I'm forgetting the word. Anyway, leave it there. So the women were there, but now when female impersonators come on stage, uh, their acting, their mannerism, and the mentorship that they get from the company owners is totally different from the way of doing business of these women. So slowly, what people are getting, and by people I mean the educated class now, people who have seen the English theater, people who know what a drama is, So those people do not go to the shows performed by the women. They now turn to this Marathi Sangeet Natak phase of the theater, where they have scripted plays, they have classical based music to some extent, and they have good drapery, whatever the features of theatrical play. They are all present there, and therefore the public taste changes. Moreover, we need to understand that we may going to the shows performed by these women was also against the social standards of the people at that time. Bombay was not that much populated as it is today, so there were less number of people. Moreover, people who would like to go to some entertainment show was against the social status of the people. Plus, it was a stigma, actually, a scandalous kind of act to go and watch these performances, etc. And the women were considered to be of low birth, belonging to low castes. Their taste was not refined, and for these reasons, people slowly moved away from those performances and they started going to theater. This happened in case of theater, but in case of film, you have to start in the 20th century, in the first half of 20th century, where you see pioneers like Dada Saheb Phalke, who was stationed in Nashik, which is nearby Bombay. So he used to go to Bombay, watch film shows there, come back and experiment on his own. And of course, he didn't get Kulin women, the women from good families, to act in his films. So whoever he used to give open advertisements in newspapers. So whoever used to approach him, he used to take the male or the female person. So male persons also approached Dada Saheb Phalke. You can see this as part of history in another film which is made on Dada Saheb Phalke's life. It's a Marathi film again. It's called Harishchandrachi Factory. Now, why factory? Because he used to call his own entrepreneurship as being the owner of a factory where he used to produce cinema. So Harishchandrachi, that is Harishchandra Ki Factory. Okay, so in that sense, you will be able to understand point number one, that the historical periods are different. Point number two, these women did not have any social repute, so they approached people for the sake of earning their livelihood. That was not the case with the theater or the cinema people, some of them at least. And third, the performances or the skills were not very refined. They did not have any mentors, particularly in theater. In cinema, it did not take as long as the theater took to allow women to act in theater in the film. In fact, you can read Mira Kusambi's book, Gender and Performance. Well, I have the book here, Gender, Culture and Performance. If you can see this, gender, culture, and performers. This talks about Marathi theatre and Marathi film. And you can see there are two pictures on the cover. This one is Bal Gandharva. He is performing in a female role. And here you have a real woman who is performing or acting in a film. So you can see that she is, kind of holding a sword in her hand, and that is like she is probably playing the role of a queen who is ready to wage a war. And here you see a male person with a coquettish kind of mannerism in that feminine pose, opposing something or saying no to something. So these are very thoughtfully chosen pictures by the author to go on the cover page. It shows the difference between the two phenomena, women working or appearing on the screen before the theater actually allowed women to work on the stage or to act on the stage. So this will help you in understanding the struggle or the friction between two crucial periods of history of Marathi culture, Marathi art, you can say, the film and the theater. Okay, so this would be a nice source for your query. Yeah,
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
hope I made some sense to you, Samvita.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Are there any
Yes.
more questions? Perhaps we can take one last question if
Yeah, I don't have any problem if people are interested in asking something, or even if they are ready to share their feedback on the lecture. That's most welcome. Yeah. Anyone else?
okay.
Okay, I don't think there are any questions now from coming from the people. So, Sneha, is it okay
Oh,
if we wind up?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sagar will be giving the vote of thanks now
Yeah,
as we are coming to a close.
sure.
Sagar, are you there?
Um, I hope I'm visible. Vote of thanks is too formal a word. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you
Thank
are.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Madhuri Dixit. It was a really exhaustive and an elaborate survey of the history of Marathi theatre and representation of women in Marathi theatre. So thank you so much for taking out the time and coming and giving a talk for the Frogs Theatre. It's really an honor to have you with us. Um, there's been a lot of back and forth going on between Sneha and ma'am. So she's been trying to get ma'am for a long time. Sneha heard ma'am speak in Talking Films Online, which is a forum for discussing films, and she was really excited to have ma'am for the Frogs um, meeting. So it was really happy that and glad that it actually has materialized. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sneha. And also thanks to all of you because it's midweek and it was a meeting at 6:30. So thanks to all of you for making it to the meeting and staying with us patiently throughout and for your wonderful questions. So we'll wrap up and of course we'll be doing more sessions in the future. Follow us, more updates and looking forward to seeing you all. And once again, thank you, ma'am. It was a great pleasure having you here. Looking forward to having you for more sessions with the frogs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sagar, Sneha, Samvita, Shrita, and Kalyani, I think. Yes, who asked some questions. So, as I said, I was very happy to be with the group, and I'm also happy the way you arranged it. So, I do look forward to having more sessions with you. And do make me a part of your community whenever you arrange such talks about different aspects of theater and cinema. I would like to be among the audiences. So, Sneha, keep me posted regarding the future sessions of the group and wish you all the best. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah,
Definitely, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
ma'am.
thanks. Bye. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye bye. Thank you.